Right, strap yourselves in because today we are diving deep into the Twilight universe. But with a bit of a twist this time. We're going to set aside the vampires and the werewolves just for a bit and instead really focus in on a character who, honestly, I think maybe a lot of us have kind of overlooked. Mike Newton. Your source material is suggesting that there's actually way more to this nice guy, quote unquote,
Yeah.
than we may have originally thought. And I gotta say, I'm actually pretty intrigued.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Mike often is dismissed as sort of just this background character. He's often seen as just a foil to Edward and all that brooding intensity. But what's so fascinating is that your source material really argues that he actually has this really crucial role to play in the story as far as grounding it. Grounding it in the human world.
Yeah.
He embodies a lot of that normalcy and familiarity that comes with,
Hmm.
the typical high school experience, which is a really stark contrast to all of the supernatural drama that's constantly swirling around Bella.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've got to admit, though, like my initial impression of him, I kind of saw him as pretty predictable,
Yeah.
just kind of like a typical high school archetype, like the boy next door who's maybe,
Yeah.
a little bit awkward, but ultimately harmless. How does this source material kind of push past that and give us something a little bit more?
Well, one of the things that they point out is that Mike really embodies this idea of the everyman,
Yeah.
someone who represents those common experiences and those insecurities that we all kind of face, especially during those really awkward teenage years. And if you remember, Bella is the outsider in Forks, right? She's drawn to all of the mysterious and dangerous stuff. Mike, on the other hand, is completely at home in his own skin. He's popular. He fits in. He enjoys the simple life, the simple life of a small town.
Right, but doesn't that kind of also make him a little, I don't know, just a little bit predictable? And I think that might be why some fans find him, I don't know, kind of boring, I guess, compared to the to some of the characters that have a little bit more drama surrounding them.
Well, that's where things get really interesting because
Yeah.
your source material actually highlights how the Twilight books they present a more nuanced view of Mike than what we see in the films. In the movies, a lot of times he's played for comedic effect. They really highlight his awkwardness and those unrequited feelings that he has for Bella. But in the books, we actually see more of his internal struggles with things like jealousy and rejection and even self-doubt.
Yeah, see, that's interesting because I feel like the movies captured his character pretty well, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of how the books kind of show us a different side of him?
Yeah, well, one example would be
Mm.
think about the movie date scene in New Moon. In the film, it's mostly played for laughs. You see Mike kind of awkwardly trying to impress Bella while, she's clearly preoccupied with Edward. But if you go back and read the book, there's actually this much deeper layer of vulnerability there, and even some resentment that comes out in Mike's internal monologue. He's grappling with the fact that Bella is choosing this, dangerous and alluring vampire
Yeah.
over him, and it forces him to confront his own insecurities because of that.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So he's not just this like happy-go-lucky,
Oh.
kind of always smiling guy. He's got some stuff going on underneath the surface there. It's almost like he's a case study in the nice guy trope where you have this seemingly good guy who struggles to understand why just being nice to someone isn't enough to win them over.
Right, exactly. And your source material actually dives into this even deeper and explores how Mike kind of both embodies and subverts that whole trope. So on the surface, he seems like the perfect example of, the nice guy who gets friend zoned. But what's really interesting is that he never resorts to manipulation or guilt tripping in order to try to get Bella to return his affections.
Yeah, it seems like he really does genuinely care for Bella and want her to be happy, even if that means that, he's going to step aside.
Exactly, and that's really crucial. Mike's acceptance of Bella's choices, even when they hurt him, demonstrates a level of emotional maturity that's honestly pretty impressive for a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
He chooses to respect her boundaries,
Yeah.
and he prioritizes their friendship, even if it means that he has to let go of those romantic feelings.
Wow, that's a side of Mike that I never really stopped to think about before.
Yeah.
This is definitely making me rethink his whole character arc now. This deep dive is already more insightful than I expected.
Oh, and we've only just scratched the surface. Your source material goes on to explore how Mike's ordinariness actually serves this crucial literary purpose in the Twilight Saga.
Okay, I am all ears. How does his ordinariness play into the bigger picture?
Well, by placing Mike in direct contrast to Edward, who is
No, you're right.
this supernatural heartthrob, Stephenie Meyer is able to really highlight just how extraordinary Bella's journey is. Mike represents that life that Bella could have had if she had chosen to, uh, go down the safe and predictable path. He embodies that small town stability, that life that a lot of people might consider normal or even desirable.
It's true. He represents that life that she's leaving behind, and in a way that makes her choice to embrace the supernatural all the more dramatic.
Exactly. It's really all about highlighting light by showing us the darkness, or in this case, highlighting the extraordinary by contrasting it with the ordinary.
And it makes me think about how Mike also brings that sense of humor to the story. It's really easy to get caught up in all of the drama and the intensity of, the vampires and the werewolves and all that. But his those awkward attempts to win Bella over oftentimes provide a little bit of comedic relief.
You're absolutely right. You see his misplaced confidence and those
Yeah.
sometimes just incredibly cringeworthy attempts at flirting. And it does bring some lightness to a story that often deals with some pretty heavy themes. But it is interesting to kind of think about whether that humor is always genuine or if it sometimes masks, some of his deeper feelings of inadequacy and insecurity.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought. Like, is the humor a coping mechanism, a way to deflect from from the sting of rejection? Now, that's really interesting. So, tell me a little bit more about this ethical dilemma that your source brings up. It mentions something about unrequited love, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike's story really does raise some thought-provoking questions about about the ethics of unrequited love and how especially how teenagers navigate those really complex emotions. He's obviously smitten with Bella, but he also has to figure out how to navigate that attraction in a way that respects her boundaries, which, let's be honest, aren't always super clear.
It's definitely a tricky situation. You've got this teenage boy dealing with all these intense feelings, and then you throw a vampire into the mix. But your source is arguing that Mike handles it all with a surprising amount of maturity.
Absolutely. And unlike some of the other characters in the series, Mike never resorts to
Right.
to manipulation or
Right.
trying to take advantage of
Yeah.
Bella's vulnerability. He's persistent, but ultimately he accepts her decisions and prioritizes their friendship.
That's honestly, that's pretty remarkable considering how much he cares for her. But
Hold on a second. Your source also mentioned some deeper layers to Mike's character, like things that even diehard fans might not know about. I'm dying to hear about this.
for instance, did you know that in Midnight Sun, which tells the story from Edward's perspective, we actually get to see Edward's rather unfavorable opinion of Mike. He sees him as shallow and opportunistic, which is kind of ironic considering Edward's own insecurities about Jacob.
Oh wow. I never thought about it that way. It's like these two guys who are both vying for Bella's attention are both kind of projecting their own insecurities onto the other person. That's quite a revelation. But what about the symbolism of his last name? Your source hinted that Newton might actually have a deeper meaning.
Yes, some fans have theorized that Newton is kind of a subtle nod to the idea of a new town and a new life for Bella. She's leaving her old life behind in Phoenix and embracing this completely different world in Forks. Okay, that's fascinating. Like Mike represents that transition, that possibility of a fresh start. So what about fan reactions to Mike? Your source mentioned that he's a bit of a polarizing character.
Yeah, he definitely is. Some fans absolutely adore him. They see him as the sweet and relatable guy who deserved better. Others find him annoying or clingy or even frustrating at times.
But doesn't that just prove that he's a well-developed character? He evokes genuine emotions from people, both positive and negative, which I think is a sign of good writing.
Absolutely. He's not just this one-dimensional archetype. He has layers of complexity that make him a fascinating subject for a deep dive like this.
So it sounds like we've established that Mike is more than just the nice guy or the comic relief. He's a complex character who embodies themes of normalcy and acceptance and even ethical dilemmas. But your source goes even further than that, suggesting that Mike's journey is ultimately about finding his own sense of self-worth even when faced with rejection.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another really intriguing aspect that
Sure.
that your source material highlights.
Mm-hmm.
It delves into how Mike's character allows us to explore this broader theme
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
acceptance,
Love that.
both of ourselves and of others.
Yeah, it really is. It's a testament to the power of self-discovery.
Mhm.
Your source material really argues that initially he kind of defines himself in relation to Bella. Like he measures his own worth by her affections, but through her rejection, he's forced to confront those insecurities and kind of build a sense of self that isn't dependent on needing external validation.
Yeah, it's like he comes to realize that his value doesn't come from, being chosen by Bella. It comes from within himself. It's like a coming of age story inside of a coming of age story.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it really speaks to
Yeah.
how universal his character is. We've all experienced those feelings of wanting to be accepted and loved and kind of feeling like we need to measure up to other people's expectations. Mike's journey really reminds us that true self-worth comes from embracing those unique qualities that we all have, rather than just trying to fit ourselves into someone else's mold.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important message, especially for teenagers who, are often grappling with those very insecurities.
Yeah.
I'm also struck by how, this ties back to that idea of Mike representing that sense of normalcy. It's almost as if he's like embodying the challenges of,
Trying to find your place in the world when you're not the quote unquote chosen one, the one who is, destined for all these extraordinary things. Right. And it really challenges us to, to kind of reconsider what we value, especially in a society that tends to glorify the exceptional, the extraordinary. Mike's story really reminds us that that there's beauty and significance in in just living an ordinary life and finding fulfillment in those in the everyday moments and those simple connections that we make.
It's almost subversive, isn't it? Like in a story that's filled with vampires and werewolves, you have this seemingly ordinary guy who ends up teaching us some of the most profound lessons about about self-acceptance and resilience.
Absolutely. And it really speaks to to Stephenie Meyer's skill as a writer, that she's able to kind of weave these complex themes into a story that's still so incredibly entertaining. But speaking of entertainment, your source also kind of dives into the fan reactions to Mike and points out that he's actually a pretty polarizing character. I'm curious.
Yeah.
What was your initial impression of Mike?
Honestly, I gotta admit, like, at first, I really didn't give him that much thought. I was so caught up in the Edward and Bella drama that I kind of saw him as I don't know, kind of like an obstacle, I guess, maybe even a nuisance at times. But this deep dive has definitely given me a newfound appreciation for his character. What about you? Did you always kind of see those hidden depths in
Well, confess that I definitely kind of fell into that trap initially of seeing him as just the stereotypical nice guy who just couldn't take a hint. But as I delved deeper into the source material, I really started to recognize the subtle ways that Meyer really kind of fleshes out his character and gives him that sense of agency and depth.
It's funny. That's the beauty of revisiting a story with fresh eyes, isn't it? We can discover all these new layers of meaning that we might have, that we might have missed the first time around. But before we wrap things up here, I'm really curious to get your take on the symbolism of his last name. Your source mentioned that fan theory about Newton representing a new town and a new life for Bella. Do you think that holds any weight?
Yeah, it's certainly an intriguing interpretation. And while there's
You newbie.
there's no definitive confirmation from Stephenie Meyer herself, it does seem to kind of align with those broader themes of transformation and self-discovery that really permeate the entire saga. I mean, Bella is quite literally stepping into this new town and this new life and this new identity. And Mike, in a way, kind of represents that bridge between her old life and her new one.
That makes me wonder if there are any other symbolic interpretations that we could explore. Like, for instance, could Newton also be kind of like an allusion to the laws of physics? Representing that kind of grounded and predictable nature of Mike's character in contrast to all of the chaos and the supernatural elements of Bella's world.
Oh, that's a brilliant connection. And your source material also it highlights the irony of Mike's last name being Newton. Given his his initial inability to kind of grasp the gravity of Bella's situation. He doesn't fully understand the dangers that she's facing by being involved with vampires. He represents a much more grounded in realistic perspective, while Bella is drawn to all of the mystery and the unknown.
Yeah. It's like these two opposing forces are kind of constantly pulling at her, you know? On the one hand, there's that allure of the supernatural, that promise of eternal love and power, and then on the other hand, there's uh, that comfort and stability of a normal life, which, you know, Mike represents.
Exactly. And that tension is really, you know, it's what makes the story so compelling. It forces us to kind of question our own desires and the choices that we make. You know, what would we be willing to sacrifice for love? What kind of compromises are we willing to make?
As we kind of approach the end of our deep dive into Mike Newton, what would you say is the most crucial takeaway from exploring his character? What should listeners really be walking away pondering?
I think the key takeaway here is that there's always more than meets the eye, even with even with characters that we think we know really well. Mike's journey really reminds us to challenge those assumptions that we make, to look beyond the surface, and to really appreciate that depth and complexity that exists in every individual, whether they're a fictional character or someone that we encounter in our daily lives.
I love that. It's a good reminder that we all have those hidden depths, you know, our own stories waiting to be told. Sometimes, you know, it takes a little bit of digging to uncover those hidden gems, but I think that's what makes the journey so rewarding.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think it's time to offer our listeners a final thought to ponder as they continue to kind of explore the Twilight Saga and the complexities of human nature.
What if we all kind of took a page from Mike Newton's book and approached everyone we meet with the assumption that there's always, you know, more to them than meets the eye, like a hidden depth just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it's a powerful challenge to try to move beyond those first impressions and those initial judgments that we make, and really try to see the humanity in everyone around us.
Yeah, imagine you know, the connections that we could forge and the stories that we might uncover if we all kind of embrace that mindset. And you know, it's not even just about, you know, being kind or it's really about acknowledging that inherent value that each individual has, recognizing that everyone has something unique to offer.
Right. And I think that kind of ties back to something we touched on earlier, that idea of you know, challenging what society deems valuable. We often get so caught up in you know, appearances and achievements and those external markers of success. But Mike's story is really a good reminder that true worth often lies in those, you know, the less obvious qualities like kindness and resilience and the ability to love and accept others' flaws.
And those are, you know, qualities that anyone can cultivate, regardless of, you know, their social status or supernatural abilities. It's almost like Mike, by being so ordinary, kind of levels the playing field for everyone. You know, he reminds us that we all have that potential for growth and transformation, even if our lives don't involve, you know, battling vampires or falling in love with werewolves.
Exactly. And I think that's a you know, really hopeful message to kind of take away from this whole deep dive. You know, Mike's journey isn't about, you know, becoming extraordinary in the conventional sense. It's about finding meaning and purpose in you know, in the everyday, in those small moments of connection. In simply being a good friend and a decent human being.
Right. It's like they say, not all heroes wear capes. Sometimes the most heroic act is, you know, just showing up for people, being present, offering support without judgment. And, you know, Mike in his own quiet way really embodies that kind of everyday heroism.
Yeah. He reminds us that, you know, true strength doesn't always have to come from, you know, power or these grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from, you know, quiet resilience, from choosing kindness even when it's really difficult, from accepting others for who they are, and from learning to love and accept ourselves, you know, imperfections and all.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the unexpectedly complex world of Mike Newton, I hope you're walking away with a renewed sense of curiosity, not just about the Twilight Saga, but about the you know, the people that you encounter in your own life. Who are the Mikes that you might have overlooked? What hidden depths are just waiting to be discovered if you just take a moment to look a little closer?
You know, remember, there's always more to learn, more to understand, and more to connect with. And maybe, just maybe, Mike Newton's story can inspire us all to be a little kinder, a little more accepting, and a little more appreciative of the beauty that exists in the in the ordinary. Until our next Jeep dive, keep exploring, keep questioning, and
Yeah.
keep seeking those hidden depths.